everybody, and thank you for curtailing your lunches to come back and hear my talk. So let's see. In 2017, Amazon bought Whole Foods. Walmart was understandably concerned. Here was a prime competitor of theirs that was stepping directly to them in their space, buying a bricks and mortar store that was already at scale. So they knew they had to get to action. They knew they had to act fast. Walmart Labs got to work with new products to bring to market that were meeting new product needs, new market needs. They came up with and launched tropicals. And tropicals are exactly what they sound like. They're pickles soaked in tropical punch. It's a 24-ounce jar, it's $1.78. One prominent online review said, "It's the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth." And it's a funny story, but it's also not that surprising, right? Because we all know that big companies struggle to find new market needs and bring them to market. But why is that? I've worked with a lot of people in big companies. I know they're very smart, they're very good at what they do, and yet time and time again, they seem to end up with tropicals or some version of that. So why? Why is that? Well, here's why. It starts with founders, and maybe the founders are 50 years ago, maybe they're 150 years ago, as these two, and they have an idea, and they think it's a good idea, and they start testing it on people. Maybe they test it on their friends and family, maybe they test it on businesses. They get more confidence, this is a good idea. So they take it to market, and they start off small with a factory, and lo and behold, that gets a foothold. Years go by, that factory grows, it increases, they start doing more and more. Decades go by, they automate it. Now they're really trucking, they're selling lots of product or service or whatever they're selling. More decades go by, they're distributing this all over the world. They've got manufacturing plants that are huge. And when it comes to actually making the product or the service, people aren't even touching it. They're sitting behind some glass with a hard helmet or something. And then finally, they're at a point where they're selling whatever they're doing to 50% of the world, literally. And they're thinking about, how do we sell to 51% of the world? How do we sell to 52% of the world? But the thing is that markets change, right? Markets always change, and users change, people change, their needs change, their problems change, the technologies that we can bring bear on those problems change, and competitors change. But the problem is, those founders are long gone, or in the case of this example, they're dead. The people who work at this company now are all thinking about how to take that 50% and make it 51% or 52%, or how to shave some time off of what they do, shave some expense. And so that's the thinking that's going on inside the company, top to bottom, front to back. And that's how you get the tropical, or a million other things like the tropical, not to single that out, that's just one funny example. There's graveyards of products and missed opportunities. So here's a conversation that I've had on more than one occasion with senior executive at a very big company. I say, "What problem are you trying to solve?" And they say, "Problem is not enough people are buying our products." And I say, whoa. If you think that's your problem, you're in trouble. You're gonna be out of business soon, because that's nobody's problem but your problem, and you can't create a business that solves your own problem. It's nobody else's problem. So the fundamental issue here is that there's two types of thinking when we talk about businesses. There's big to bigger, and new to big. So big to bigger is what those companies that are delivering to 50% of the market and trying to deliver 51%, 52%, that's what they're doing. And then new to big is, I think there's a market need here, and how do I figure out what that is? How do I satisfy that need to the customer and then bring it to market, and how do I make money on that? And they're both totally legitimate systems, but they're totally different, and you have to know where you're playing. If you were to apply new to big thinking to a big to bigger company, it'd be crazy, right? Similarly, if you were to apply big to bigger thinking to a new to big idea, you would crush it. And that's all too often what happens with these big companies. And I've been talking with us, the great thing about this conference is that I've had this conversation with people for 2 days now, and what strikes me is that these are systems that we're talking about, right? And so you can take somebody who's brilliant and knows how to do startups and knows how to execute and drop them into a big to bigger system, and it just won't work because the system does not lead to successful outputs. And I experienced that when I was at the New York Times trying to launch new products. It was a big to bigger system. So we need new to big systems, we need big to bigger systems, we need to understand when we need both. So where does that leave us? Does that leave us, are all big companies dinosaurs? Do we need to put all of our eggs in the startup basket for solving the future problems of the world? Company I work with, Bionic, believes no, that's not the case. We believe that you can take these giant old companies that are really big to bigger and help them relearn this new to big process. Our company is like twice the size of this now. I couldn't find a newer picture. And we do this in 3 basic ways. One, we teach entrepreneurial mindsets and behaviors. Then we teach venture capitalist mindsets and behaviors. And then we install systems of support to make that go. And so the entrepreneurial mindsets, we're teaching that to the makers of the company. The venture capitalist mindsets we're teaching to the senior leadership of the company. And then the systems of support we're installing as necessary as we go. So what does this look like? Entrepreneurial mindsets and behaviors. I'm the head of the entrepreneurs team at Bionic, so my team runs this. So big companies, to a T, when you talk to them, they say, we know our customer. We've got reams of data on them. We don't need to go talk to anybody. And we say, yeah, let's just go talk to them anyway. So we always start by talking to customers. Here's a colleague of mine, Jason, talking to a person in her bathroom because we were talking about bathroom things. And so he'll just go spend a day talking to somebody in their bathroom and bring our partners with him, our big to bigger partners. And so we're trying here to really not just understand the problem that they have, but what's top of mind for them, what are their hopes, their fears, and really model their mind inside our own mind, right? Once we do that, we come back and we think through, all right, we understand their hopes and fears, their big problems, major pain points. What are the new technologies that we could apply to that? What are the new regulations that might come to bear on that? And how can we solve these problems or these hopes and fears in radically better ways? Once we do that, so big companies would then take that idea, put $30 million against it, and rush it to market, right? At scale. We instead prototype it as quickly as we can, get it back out to potential users and get their feedback, and then we just do this over and over again, starting at very low fidelity, going to higher fidelity, starting at low confidence and getting increasingly high confidence. As we do that, we're also thinking about business models. So we're thinking, how much would these people pay for this product or service? What's the cost to acquire them? What are the cost of goods sold? All these things so that we can understand, back up and say, is this even a business that we want to be in? Could we make money on this or not? And then finally, no slide for this, but a big part of teaching this entrepreneurial mindset is really teaching ownership and radical ownership, because in these big companies, a lot of times, one initiative is owned by 30 people or 40 people, and when 30 people own something, nobody owns it, right? And so these teams that we work with are teams of 2 and 3, and I just flew in from San Francisco where we've got a partner, and I was saying to this team, you guys have to decide. I don't want you taking cues from the senior executives here which way is the right way to go. It's your call, and go up there and you tell them. And you know what? They don't even know what's right. Anyway, they may think they know what's right, but they don't. So you guys own this. And so that's a major part of this as well. So while we're doing that on the entrepreneurial side, we're also working with the senior leaders of the company to work on venture capitalist mindsets and behaviors. So the first thing we do with them is we get them to convene a growth board. And a growth board is just a group of decision makers that gets together once a quarter to look at all these ideas that are coming down the funnel and say, fund or defund based on the evidence. So just like venture capitalists do with their portfolio, are we going to re-up you or not, based on the evidence and how far you've come. We teach them to take a portfolio approach. So again, going back to the way most big companies work, they take one bet, it's a moonshot, and they're going to put all their money on it, and they're going to go to the moon, right? We instead counsel them to take a bunch of bets. You don't know which ones are going to pan out, and it's better to just get a bunch in there. As venture capitalists know, maybe 1 out of 20 of these will really make you money, right? So you've got to get a lot going. We teach them to ask the right questions. The big to bigger questions are, how fast are you growing? how much money are you making, how fast are you cutting costs, all these things. We teach them instead, for each stage, there's different questions you have to be asking. So who are your customers? Do your customers like your product? How much do they like your product? Are they repurchasing your product? Are they telling their friends about your product or service, et cetera, et cetera? What's the cost to acquire the customer? You have to know where they are and what the next thing to really understand and validate is. Then we teach them to fund teams, not ideas. And so again, thinking about these big companies, they get all excited about an idea and they might move the team around to make it work. We instead teach them, get a good team and stick with that team. If they're not on the right idea right now, they'll find it sooner or later. And so the things that we look for are people that are curious, collaborative, obsessed, visionary, all these things. And we sift through these people to find the right teams. I spend a lot of time on that. Velocity of learning. So again, getting away from this idea that you're doing a moonshot and you're going to take one shot at it, you're going to make this billion-dollar new business. It's all about learning, right? And we say, he who learns fastest wins. As long as you're learning, you're going to eventually find out what the right move is, which is, by the way, how Amazon ended up buying Whole Foods, because they had been learning in this space for years and testing and learning. Look for emergent wins. We don't know where the winners are going to come from. We'll always be surprised. And so look, as you've got this portfolio of bets, just see what's starting to catch fire and take hold and double down on those rather than trying to predict what the wins are going to be first. Okay, systems support. I'm not going to go into this here, but I'll just say that it takes more than teaching mindsets to actually transform gigantic companies. We recognize that, and there's a whole slew of other things we work on alongside those as well. So what this looks like in real life. This is Devin and Kyra. They're a team that I've been working with for a little over a year. Devin on the right, she's been with this company for 14 years. She said that on her first day, she was told by somebody, just remember, you don't belong here. And she's always wanted to launch products from day one and has always been stymied every step of the way. I said, what does it feel like now working with us? She said, it's starting to feel like I'm not the only one on my side of the table. There's other people on my side of the table, and they're big people. She said, this is what this company looks like when it wants to win. She also said, I don't know if I'm going to be promoted or fired, but I'll take my chances. And then finally, I'm reading a book right now on how to motivate people, because I want to understand how to motivate my sons as much as possible. And the first section on it is, if you want to motivate people, give them control. And I just thought of these two because they have full control over what they're doing, and they're so motivated, it's insane. I get text messages from them at like 11:30 on a Friday night. You can't believe what we just found. And so they're just lapping their colleagues at this company in terms of motivation. Okay, so zooming out then, each one of these triangles would represent one team like Devin and Kyra. So at the same partner, they've got probably close to 100 teams that are going down this funnel, trying to understand the customer, validate it, get into market, et cetera. So it's going huge, and things are starting to get into market. What does this look like in market? This is going to a different partner now, because I'm not allowed to talk about that previous partner and name names. This is a partner, Exelon, that we've been working with for a while. They're an energy company. They wanted to diversify beyond nuclear. They looked around with us, and we realized that there's 5 million miles of energy cable in the US alone, and every single one of those poles needs to be monitored and checked. And companies can't do that currently because the cost is so high, and that's actually why the Camp Fire happened in California, because PG&E wasn't monitoring these poles. And so they said, we could do this with drones pretty easily. And so they got $5 million from their CEO to do this. They took this to market late last year. They've got enterprise partners. It's going pretty well. And so just want to pause and say we're a long way from tropicals here. And then the rest is, no, it's absolutely not like Silicon Valley at all. And it's very different in the fact that we're not trying to get acquired. None of these people are trying to get acquired. They're already acquired. So we're trying to create value, create sustainable value for customers that need these services. Okay, so what? Why am I telling you all this? So this was me back in my startup days with the founder and our lead investor. And the me at this time would have said that big companies are dinosaurs. And startups of the future, and I just loved the idea of starting something and getting acquired, and that seemed to me like what the world was about. But as I get older and wiser, perhaps, questionable, I realize that it's not for me. I don't care about starting things so much. I don't care about exiting so much. What I care about is impact. I want to have impact. And if you want to have impact, you need to find the highest leverage spot you can. If you want to dent the future, you got to find the biggest hammer you can dent it with, right? And these big companies, I think, are that thing, if you can leverage them. And that's the question. So can you leverage these big companies? I think history would say, no, you can't, right? If we look back, history is much more on the side of the tropical than the drone that I was showing. But we're pretty early into this whole experiment of corporations. We're about 200 years into this, right? And in that time, it's changed radically, and it's continuing to change, and it's evolving. And my feeling is that we are going to be able to leverage these gigantic battleships that if you can change their course, you can have so much impact in the world. And it's just a matter of time before we figure that out. And I invite you all to think that same way. So thank you.